Hello AP. Okay, today's video has to do with part writing with other types of seventh chords besides the dominant seventh. So these are just a few examples. We have the 2 minor seventh, the 7 fully diminished seventh, the major 1 seventh, and the major 4 seventh, the 2 half diminished seventh, and the 3 augmented seventh. So let's continue on. So when you resolve a dominant seventh chord, remember that you should sing the song and you'll never go wrong. And the song has to do with these solfege syllables from the previous video. Sol, do, ti, do, re, do, fa, mi, sol, sol. So think about the song. Which is the seventh of the seventh chord? That would be fa. And fa should always resolve down to mi. And this also applies to all types of seventh chords. Resolve the seventh of the seventh chord down by step. If you need to pause the video at this time to copy down this page, please do so. Otherwise, we're going to continue on. Okay, so keeping in mind that we need to always resolve the seventh of a seventh chord down by step, what I would like you to do is take out some staff paper, copy down what you see, notice the figured bass. I've also supplied the pitches at the bottom for each of these chords. We are in the key of B flat major. We have 3 measures, and we have the soprano and the bass notes written in for this harmonic progression. We also have the Roman numeral analysis. Page down a tiny bit, as you can see. And what we want to do is supply the alto and the tenor voices, keeping in mind of all of the rules of doubling and spacing that we have learned up to this point. So for example, the first chord is just a major 1 chord. It's a triad, it's not a 7th chord, and it's in first inversion, so you should know what to double there. The second chord is a 7th chord indeed, because we have 6-5. So that's a 7th chord in inversion. The third chord is just a 5 chord triad, major in the key of B flat, followed by a 5-7 chord in the key of B flat. So we have to add the 7th in, and that's in root position. And our ending chord is going to be just the major 1. So take a moment to voice lead this harmonic progression, and take another moment to double check for the correct tones, the correct doubling, the correct spacing, and make sure that you have no illegal motion. And we'll come back in a little while to check your answers. Good luck. Okay, we are going to check our work. You should be completed with this harmonic progression. If you're not done, then I suggest not looking up at the screen until you are finished, because we're going to go on to the next frame to check our answers. I do want to, on this page, circle the seventh of the seventh chords. So here is our seventh chord. So we have 1, 3, 5, 7, which is Sol, Ti, Re, Fa. So according to our rule, we should resolve that B flat down by step. Here's another seventh chord. 1, 3, 5, 7, Sol, Ti, Re, Fa. We should be resolving this E flat, the Fa, down a step to Mi. So let's see how everybody did. Here is the harmonic progression completed. First chord, double the soprano. It's a major triad in first inversion. Second chord is a seventh chord, 4 different tones. I've circled the seventh with an arrow pointing downward a step toward its resolution. The 5 chord, double the bass, it's in root position. The 5-7 chord, that's a root position 7th chord. I've circled the E flat, which is the 7th, resolving down 1 step to the ending triad, where I've doubled the bass because we're in root position. Check your voice leading, check for proper motion, and this is very smooth voice leading. So hopefully you did okay with this. If you were to provide the Roman numeral analysis, keep in mind that you do need to include the figured bass numbers. You know, the 6, the 6-5, and the 7 to indicate inversions and so on. Okay, so we're going to move on to do another example. So if you need to pause this to check things out, please do so. Otherwise, let's continue on to the next frame. Okay, just a reminder, be really careful with 7th chords. You also need to resolve the leading tone appropriately too. So remember, we spoke about this. T should go to Do or occasionally to Sol. So just a quick reminder there. And let's head on over to the next frame. And here we have another example. Always resolve the 7th of a 7th chord down by step, and be careful of the leading tone. Okay, so here is our Roman numeral analysis. To save time, I've included the pitches, although you should be able to, at this point, provide the pitches if they weren't given to you. And the last measure is incomplete. So let's try to go to a 1. So take a moment to examine carefully the key signature of A minor. We're starting off with a 5 chord. It's a triad. And this should be a G sharp. We do have a capital 5. Heading on over to the 7 fully diminished 6. Then in the next measure, we have a minor 1 chord in inversion to a major 5 chord, and we'll end on a 1 chord in root position. So take a moment to copy this down and provide a harmonic progression where you need to supply the alto and tenor voices in the first 2 measures, and in the last measure supply all 4 voices. Good luck, AP. If you have finished this harmonic progression, then what I want you to do is in the last measure, instead of making it a minor 1, try going from the major 5 chord, and in the last measure, let's do a major 6. Okay, we are going to head on to the next frame where we have a completed harmonic progression. So if you're still working, please continue to work. Do not look up for the answers yet. You can look up when you are done with your harmonic progression. But we're going to move on because you should be done at this point. And here we are. So in the first measure, I've doubled the bass because we're dealing with a root position triad. The tenors are singing the E. I have to make sure to include a sharp sign next to the G for the altos. And in the next chord, we have a G sharp, B, D, F. That's a 7, fully diminished 6, 5. So that's the 7th chord in first inversion with the B in the bass that was given to us. And you notice that I've kept the common tone from the previous chord, the G sharp, right in the alto for some very smooth voice leading. In that 7 diminished 6-5 chord, I have circled T with an arrow pointing up to Do. That's the way it should resolve in the next chord. And in that 7 diminished 6-5 chord, I have circled the 7th, which is Fa, that should resolve downward by a step. And in the 1-6 chord, we have the soprano doubled by the bass. It's a first inversion triad, minor triad, A, C, E. To the 5 chord, major, keeping in mind we should always include that G sharp where I have in the altos. I've kept the tenors singing the same note. Why change? No need. And in our last measure, we can take the minor 1 and we can do this for the bass, sol, do, or down here. Okay, we could double that there in the soprano. So they're going re to do. And the alto is T. We could go either way. We can have the altos do this, T do, or remember, occasionally we can go T sol, especially if it's in an inner voice. So we'll have our 5th of that minor triad. So I'll rewrite it this way. The sopranos can do that, and the altos can do that. There's our T sol, or T do, and the 3rd is missing of the last chord, so that would be the job of the tenor, which would be the C, like that. So there's 2 ways you could have done this. Of course, we should check to make sure that our voice leading is okay and we have no parallel fifths, parallel octaves, and things like that. And it seems to be looking okay from this chord to this chord. And even from this chord to the last chord. I don't see any errors there. So that's how you would do that. Now, if you finished early, I gave you an assignment to, instead of making the last chord a minor 1, to make it deceptive. We call that deceptive cadence, when we go from a 5 chord to a 6 chord. So that means that the basses would then sing an F. Now you recall that we're going to need irregular doubling because we're in a minor key and we're going from a 5 to a 6 chord. The 6th chord here will have to be irregular doubling to avoid parallel motion, illegal parallel motion. So I'll show you what I'm talking about. So our last chord we would spell as F, A, C, and normally we would double the F. So let's try to plug some things in and see how we do. And then I would need the tenors to sing the C. So here's an F, here's a C, here's an F, and here's an A. So right now, that is the regular way it should be doubled, proper doubling. However, you notice a problem right off the bat. Look at the alto line. We have a G sharp to an F. A G sharp to an F is an augmented second right here. So we don't want that augmented second. That's not allowed in part writing. So that's why it has to be irregular doubling, which means we have to get rid of the F, and the altos will double the soprano. So we have 1 root, 2/3, and then a 5th. That's that rule where you have to take the interval of a 10th. So in this case, it happens to be right here, the E to the G sharp goes to the F to the A. And that's our irregular doubling on this chord. Remember that, please, when you're going from a 5 to a 6 chord in minor. Okay, so there you have it. If you need to pause the video to check this over and look it over, please do so. Otherwise, we're going to move on. So just a quick review. When part writing with all types of 7th chords, always resolve the 7th of the chord down by a step. But also be careful that you still need to resolve the leading tone, which is T, appropriately to do or to sol. Just a quick recap of everything so far. So you should be aware of these diatonic triads and Roman numeral analysis. These are triads. This is review from a long time ago. For major, major 1, minor 2, minor 3, major 4, major 5, minor 6, 7 diminished, and major 1. Here it is, diatonic triads for major, natural minor, harmonic minor, and melodic minor. Remember, when you're dealing with harmonic minor, it's going to be an augmented third chord, augmented 3 chord. And it's going to be a 7 diminished. If it's just natural minor, the 3 chord is major and the 7 chord is major. If you need to pause and jot this down, please do so. Otherwise, we're going to continue. The same thing applies to 7th chords. So here I have our diatonic 7th chords for major, natural minor, harmonic minor, and melodic minor. Okay. That brings us to more review. In addition to diatonic triads, every major and minor scale has 7 diatonic 7th chords. So we're going to examine them for the C major scale. First, we'll construct a C major scale. Then we'll stack our 3 generic thirds on top of each note and analyze the resulting 7th chords. The first one, major 7. The second, minor 7th. The third, also a minor 7th. The fourth is like the first, major 7th. The fifth is our dominant 7th. The sixth is our minor 7th, just like 2 and 3. The 7th is our half diminished 7th. And the 8th is the same as the first, major 7th. Now let's look at C natural minor. Let's construct the scale first. Notice the key signature. And we'll stack our superimposed thirds on top and analyze the results. The first chord is a minor 7th. Remember, we have a minor triad plus a minor 7th interval. The second chord is a diminished triad and a minor 7th, therefore making it a half diminished 7th chord. The third chord is E flat, G, B flat, D, which is a major triad and a major 7th. So it's a major 7th chord. The fourth chord is F, A flat, C, E flat, which is a minor triad and a minor 7th. Therefore, it is a minor 7th chord. The fifth chord is a minor triad and a minor 7th. Therefore, it is also a minor 7th chord. The sixth chord is a major triad plus a major 7th, making it a major 7th chord. The seventh chord is a major triad and a minor 7th. Therefore, it is a dominant 7th chord. And the 8th chord is like the first chord. Okay, keep in mind that this is the diatonic 7th chords for natural minor, because now we're going to go on to harmonic minor, which is probably more often used. Okay, so to convert natural minor to harmonic minor, the seventh tone, as you know, is raised a half a step. So therefore, each B flat is raised to a B natural. So I've just put in all my B naturals. And of course, now the quality of the seventh chord is changed on the first chord, the third chord, the fifth chord, and the seventh chord. So we need to reanalyze those chords. The first chord is now C, E flat, G, B, a minor triad and a major seventh. This minor major seventh chord is not a type of seventh chord we study, but you should know it. The third chord is now E flat, G, B, D, which is an augmented triad and a major seventh. Therefore, it is an augmented major seventh chord, which we also have not studied and will not study, but you should be aware of it. The fifth chord is now G, B, D, F, which is a major triad and a minor seventh. So this one we are very familiar with. This is now the dominant seventh chord, which you will definitely part write for and voice lead for in harmonic minor, because they use the 5 chord a lot, but not so much the 1 chord and the 3 chord. And our seventh chord is now B, D, F, A flat, which is a diminished triad and a diminished seventh. Therefore, it's a fully diminished seventh chord, which we have also studied. And the eighth is like the first. Primary versus secondary, quick review. Primary are the triads most often used. Secondaries aren't used as much, but are still very common. In the next video, we'll be talking about good harmonic progressions.